Well, hello, Dr. Contrast Live here. Welcome to the Dream Labs, and just thought I'd take a minute here before we get into today's stream with a little bit more depth here. I thought I'd take a moment and bring up to speed as to where we were. For those of you who were with us on Wednesday, we were working with this G12 revision series or design review, and for those of you who missed the activity, for example, I spent a little bit of time going back to the histrionics of where we were on Wednesday and some of the sketches we showed at that time to kind of develop some process here and to advance the cause of getting this G12 into a system where we can start to refine it and maybe massage some sketches and some surfaces with it, and hopefully bring it into some sort of a conclusion umbrella where we start really refining some of the shapes and getting it down to a nice nitty-gritty solid statement for this G12 revision. So we started here, for example, these little pencil sketches done very quickly, and look an overhead view here showing us what we might look like, and a little bit of an elevation, and then turning it around a little bit, showing the rear three-quarter with some of this dihedral being on an angle that could kind of articulate or move according to speed, getting the spacing right in the rear track, and a real low profile upper on this. And we really keep that thing really captive well below the bone line or the side elevation line as we go through the process and developing the shape. Also, a little sketch back here again, reverting back to the rear three-quarter again. Notice how really low profile we're keeping that upper, just to get that thing down as best we can in an elevation. And looking at some of the engine systems here, hydrogen nacelle pieces, very much origin type, almost hexagonal process, but just modulating the engine system just a little bit. And from that went into an elevation study again, and just try to add some wheel skirts or change some of the bone lines or the character lines in the elevation. And it just didn't seem to have the same rhythm or the same simplicity, which I think is what we're after, keeping it nice and simple, because the original origin, is as clumsy as it might be in some areas, it does have a nice, clean, streamlined look to it. So we want to make sure we honor that and keep that as part of the package development here. So let's get rid of these guys, and we'll show you a couple more development pieces here, and then get right into the main body of what we're going to do today. So then we went from that, those two generations, did a couple more little loose sketches here. One a little bit, again, overhead three-quarter. Getting a little more specific about some of the shapes and forms. We're getting some really elegant plan view forms in this thing. So it kind of begins to, as you walk around, it's actually a piece of sculpture as well as a racing car as well, or a motorsports machine. So again, adding like the front dihedral and trying to integrate that back into the front wheels itself or the envelopes itself, and then back to an elevation study, getting a little bit more fill in this thing. The engine, for example, the hydrogen nacelle system underneath the carriage of the cockpit or the cradle where the passenger or the driver is. So that led us to moving around again, going to a little front three-quarter, real low profile sketch on this guy to see what it might look like at elevation. Notice we're trying to keep that cockpit in between the wheels, very low, extremely low profile up on top to keep that nice flat system from an aero point of view, and again from a serviceability point of view, very, very flexible to work with here. So and again, into a front elevation, what it might look like, for example, looking dead on front. Some interesting things, but not. I'm just a little bit concerned about some of the aero systems up and through here. We want to lift that up a little bit and integrate it into the wheels just a bit and see how that begins to function. And then again, back to the rear three-quarter, really trying to keep this real low profile, this very sharp diagonal line with an underskirt on it and an under tray that helps the aero, the push or the pull suction down on the track itself. And then again, another engine variation back here on the nacelle. So that's another set of we did. And looking at one more family here before we move on. There's another family of sketches done, looking primarily a little bit of three-quarters and rear. Very difficult set of circumstances to deal with. How do you handle all that mass back there, for example, once you begin to get these drive lines to kind of work for you, and begin to make a real solid statement in terms of it's interesting all the way around. When you get to the rear end, it looks like it's really business-like. So again, the hydrogen system using octagonal, hexagonal pieces into a really neat barge board, almost a full tray, a la Bentley dihedral system underneath it to kind of secure the air. This little piece here again is a little under tray airflow active aero piece that sits in here. And again, for pit stop availability, this front panel, which is closed, opens up, and you just kind of reverse and change the tire and so forth on your way. Same system will be involved in the rear three-quarter as well, using this pant system back here to kind of do the same thing, slide back or flip up, and it becomes easy to change the tires. Again, rear three-quarter, another variation on the theme, maybe a little more electronic systems, showing you some of the hardware back and through here, Again, same engine nacelle system, that very hexagonal look. Real low profile again in the cockpit, and above all else, another little over 3/4 view of what that shape is starting to do. So from those series on Wednesday, we kind of launched a little bit into some pencil sketches and looked at these things as we went along the way here. Looking at a little bit of a plan view. What's it going to look like, for example, when you take some of these elements, for example, that we did here. Let me find that one overhead sketch here. Yeah, this guy. What we're dealing with, for example, when you get into an element such as this, daring as that might look in an elevation or part of a 3/4 overhead perspective, what does it start to look like when you drop it into a plan view? Is it dramatic enough? I'm not quite sure that this guy has the answers yet with regard to the overall character. I'd like to see it kind of compress a little bit, and maybe a little less ragged out here, a little bit more streamlined up in the actual the cantilevers or the pontoon systems that are going to support the front wheels. All that's going to be pretty active in terms of some good refreshing looks from a design setup from where we were on Wednesday. These were all generated on Wednesday. Just kind of bring you a little bit of a review here. And then on top of that, going back to an elevation where the actual driver is going to be situated, giving it some sort of a human scale. How big is it? Is it going to be this scale to that scale? This is more the appropriate scale of the original G12. It's a very large, massive vehicle. Now, do we want to keep it that scale? I'm not quite sure yet. We'll kind of let the story be unfolded as we go from step to step. So from that series, we went into a little series of sketches doing these. Again, back to a plan view, a little more ragged, a little more insect-like. Again, with the same sponson approach up on front in the plan view, kind of cradling the cockpit in between the wheel sections themselves, and then looking at, for example, support systems where the connectors are intakes for engine and an exhaust and so forth. And again, these very, very strong, powerful, almost kiloped grips for the actual front wheel. So a little bit of 3/4 study again, looking at this whole under tray process with this little active aero piece underneath the front wheel envelope. And again, keeping the real low profile on the upper really kind of streamlined and as minimal as we can get it. Again, and then from that, showing a little bit of a side view where the actual cockpit assembly is going to be. And what the actual driver is going to experience, where that location is. So we're pretty good there scale-wise. Good sight line, for example, because the glass is actually going to be down in this area, so it's going to give them a lot of visibility. And even though the fender lines are high, there's a lot of transparency we'll be putting into the actual wheel envelopes themselves to kind of put it all together and to see what the chemistry starts to look like. And maybe a little indication out here, maybe a potential logo for the G12A series we're working on. And then last but not least, we've kind of looked at, went to a little bit of overhead 1 point, and again, back to plan view again. Very, very interesting look at plan view studies, for example, and doing really interesting things in terms of scale. I'm not quite sure yet that we're there, but I like the idea that it's got this very floating nacelle, kind of a survival cell look that's being supported by the kilopeds or the outriggers for the wheels, and then this is the rear section. Very clean and round, keeping it nice and simple. No need, for example, look at this view. Bring those lines right on through and keep that upper piece very, very solid. Again, notice how low profile that upper is. And again, I'm not quite sure yet if I want to go this approach with the canards up front, or push the cabin rivet a little bit and put that point inside the wheels for safety purposes and impact that possibilities. So all that to be determined yet. And then the last sketch we did was this. We kind of looked at this as a result for review. We're pretty close with this overall character feel. Notice this how we start to connect the dots here by bringing that front sponson or that canard system into the wheels itself. We might want to take that and go a little further back with it, as I said just a moment ago. But again, a very interesting set of a very imposing looking form here with a V2L brake flap, for example, up on the upper deck. And again, this is a little dihedral piece back here that begins to move both fore and aft at speed into corners and so forth, kind of stabilize the machine as it goes. And then from there back into a nice little thumbnail study of what the elevations might look like. Now we're getting close to a really good streamlined form. This is all airspace in here. Now I know we can't get by with that, but just to get the gesture down, that's what we're looking at. And we tried going downhill a little bit with these drive lines, and it didn't have the same character. It just kind of weakens it out. Looks more typical like a two-place coupe or whatever. Hey Chip, how are you? I'm glad you can join us. I'm just going to do a little bit of a review here. Did you catch everything thus far? You want to go back in again and review some things, or are you okay? Really great to have you on board, Chip. Thanks for joining us here. Going back through a little bit of the review that we just got here. Oh, okay. No problem, Chip. We went through a little quick design review based on where we were on Wednesday. I don't know if you were there with us or not, but we went through some of the sketches This is the final culmination. Let me take you back to square one. We started the stream off on Wednesday looking at the G12 to kind of refine some things. We just looked at a plan view to start, then an elevation, put a little bit of a package study in place where the driver, the occupant might go. Before that, we were looking at sketches like this, where we actually took the actual machine itself and did some little pencil roughs. This was done before the stream, for example. I did my homework on getting this G12 squared away. But looking at the overall three-quarter top overview on this thing, what it might look like in terms of keeping it nice and clean and simple. Not a lot of variation on theme here, but just kind of refine the thing a little bit. Getting the cockpit established, the canard support systems under the wheel pants themselves, or the outriggers, and the intake system in the engine, the hydrogen engine system. And again, closing off the wheels and just keeping it nice and clean all the way through. So we've got a nice and clean, simple shot at it. This elevation kind of gets close to where we are, just real low profile. In other words, it's almost all high hip in terms of fender line, then a real low upper. So you just barely see all this. This is suspended between the actual wheels and the outriggers right and left hand side. Then when we switched around, we did a bunch of studies on the rear three-quarter, but these are some of the things we developed. For example, we're getting like a very interesting hydrogen engine system with the outlet where the exhaust pieces are, and into a really nice big strong mandible-like or a full tray system under tray to kind of keep this thing down and provide more suction from the rear end. Same thing with this. Notice in this sketch, this is what really kind of highlights this. Look at where that upper is relative to the fenders. That's where we want to really develop it. Let's see, detailed injecting. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, it looks the arrow. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here. We're not quite there yet, Chip, but I think we're getting closer to it. So again, notice again how low that profile is, and I'm keeping those canards out there, and then getting back to this very massive engine system. It looks really business-like back there. So from those sketches on Wednesday, we're into this little plan view. We'll go quickly here into a plan view look, into a really fast elevation where the occupant is going to be, the driver seated, full forward and so forth. Gives it a lot of cab forward look. Very IndyCar Formula One look, but it's still a little bit lithe looking. And again, we really want to keep that real low profile. This is upper and this is fender. Real low profile. Nice and clean. So there's sketch one. When we went through that series and did little three-quarter studies to kind of really show what this under tray is doing here. This little canard comes off the actual front wheel pant and provides some active aero underneath the wheels that kind of drive the air back into the process itself. Real crude plan view, almost more insect-like. This is really going to be the fun part in this whole machine. Getting a good front section detail, and also what's going to look for, what's going to take place in the plan view. And again, let's see, not much room for chrome. Yeah, there's not a lot of room, but I think the materials of technology will dictate where that package is going to end up, Chip. So that's a good point. But back to this area here. If we push this back a little bit and then let the wheels kind of take care of the majority of the impact, like we're doing, I'll show you in a minute here, that I think is going to help provide that situation. We're looking for theme or presence here now, and revising this and refining the shape as we're going through it. So this is a little sketch we did, and we finally ended up going to like an overhead 1 point. Same process again, getting a real good lithe, simple system to work with, the engine intakes. This scallop piece, low cockpit, and then adding a dihedral up front. Do we want to bring it out or we want to bring it back? And those are the things we're going to be working on here as we go through the process today. Then the sketch we ended up with was a little overhead three-quarter like this. Getting closer again. I still think we're going to do some, maybe today, let's see, my chromosomes for real life. Pixels and pen strokes don't have such words yet. Well, you've got that right. But eventually we're going to make this thing become a real singer here. So what you're talking about, Chip, we're going to take into account to make sure that all these things are taken care of. But I think the big thing is now to maybe take this whole front end assembly and push it rearward and let these sponsons take care of a lot of crush zones and information and so forth. But again, this ended up with a nice little rough pencil sketch with the pontoons in place, the under tray, some of the active aero pieces in the rear area, and then a brake flap up on top or a V2L system. And again, really tight canopy and so forth, support canards, and the replacement to the wheels and so forth. So that's where we are. And then I want to just start out with a couple of nice little the refinement studies here. We kind of work with this guy a little bit. So let's get started with this game. Let's give this out of the way. Pardon my hands here, Chip, and we'll just get started. Refinement meaning maybe we've got enough of this thing done, but let's just go back and through some little real quick sketches here. Some ballpoint pen. Gonna rail this in. Start nice and loosely. Get the wheels planted. Get the rear wheel planted. Come back in off that fender line. Bring that drive line back. Float it off of there. And again, get the wheel thickness in place. Go across and across. Get that all set up. Real nice, really quick gesture sketches here, Chip. Nothing fancy today. I'm just going to refine some things here. So now we've got that set. Let's kind of bring this into play. Let's get that drive line to go rearward. Let's bring this down to ground and get that lower canard in place. Let's kick this back a little bit and take that drive line into place. Get that set, throw that in place, bring this up to there and the speed. Let's bring it downhill a little bit and get this body side in here. Wheel pant. Let's come back and pick up that center line. How do I know where that center line? I'm going to drive that through to that center line. Bring it forward just a bit, the nose cap, and just get that center line of the cockpit right in place. There it is. Look how light that is. Nice and simple. Real low profile. The distance from there to there, really minimal. So we're just kind of roughing it. Hey, Ballistic, how are you? Today, nice. And we're doing a little bit of refinement today, Ballistic, on this G12 we were working with on Wednesday. I just thought it'd be worthwhile after we finished up on Wednesday to come back in and do, hey, Pixel, how are you, Chief? Yeah, I'm having a great day thus far. So thanks for joining us there, Pixel. Today's session is really taking a look at what we developed on Wednesday and refining some of the pieces that we worked with. For example, we ended up, we go back again here just for a review. We ended up with like a real rapid pencil sketch that might look like we're getting closer to refinement in this thing, and some of the elements are all coming together. I've got some concerns. You'll notice on some of the chat systems here, concerns about this front impact there. We want to take this whole assembly, then push it rearward, and let the wheel sponsons or the pontoons take care of impact. So those things we're going to work with and start to refine. But the overall gesture, I think, is there, keeping a nice and low profile. Notice again in the elevation, real low profile, and then again that high fender line to kind of help give that real simple, real clean aerodynamic look to it. So I think we're there. And honestly, let's go. Now these sketches are going to kind of play up on just getting some real fine-tuned pieces. Been interesting watching. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But let's say thank you. So today's element is to really kind of look at maybe little subtle things that might make a difference in the overall package layout here. So let's get this all set. Now that I've got that center, let's put this in place. Let's get the cockpit in place here first. Run that through. Dive that in. All point pan. I'm going real light first. I'll show a little bit more detail here. Intake. Engine intake. Boy, that just worked in nicely. That blends right into that body side of that form. That's really starting to look some really cool stuff here. So let's draw that through. Let's get this underbody in place. Let's get that wheel pad in. I'm going to close this off, bring it down to ground, drive that through, and get that rear flap to work right there. There's a real fast gesture on what this guy is going to look like here. Kind of bring it up to speed a little bit here and get this into place. Down to ground, into rear wheel, a little bolder, so you can see where the package is. Wheel system here. Fender over, let's just drop this down just a bit, kind of clean this up. Let's drop this down and begin to pick up this front end system. Let's get those bolsters, for example, those canards that are going to support the suspension. Let's get those to work. Roll those in place. Bring the underbody through. Let's come right off of this chin and give it that kind of a look first. Let's see what happens if I come off that chin and begin to build this to connect into the wheels. So we'll see a little bit of that. Let's put a bit more boldness into this thing. Some support element. Keep it all underneath and tuck it in. Come off of that. Let's get a little on the windshield here. By the way, stay tuned on Wednesday next week from, and this next Wednesday, I'm going to start working on the inside of this thing. So there's a really interesting fighter cockpit look to it. So let's do this. This is where the cockpit is, the canopy itself. There it is. A little bit of side glass look through. Let's draw through that shape and get that shape to run through. There it is there. And there's a little piece on the far side. That's that. Get a section line through here. Roll that over. And what you don't see, and I'll show you in a minute here, is this form disappears body to wheel sponson. That begins to just tuck in a little bit. So then really nice, almost like an inverted triangle appearance. Let's get this other sponson to work for us here. Drive that back. Let's drive that back. And into this. Let's put a little bit of this into it too. A little bit of maybe some headlights, a little headlight action in that. And let's bring the speed up just a bit more. Let's get this line to kind of work through here. Let's kind of ink this in. That's all part of that intake piece for engine intake. Let's drive that through. Get this rear wheel in place, a little more body to it. Drive that back. And let's put that rear suspension connection that the original G12 has. And we'll do this with it. Let's kind of bring that back and spring that into place. There's the actual connector. That little assembly right there comes out the original G12. We don't want to lose too much of that. That gives us a little bit more flexibility. and begin to build this rear system. There's a really interesting little perspective sketch very quickly about what this form's starting to look like here. So let's take it a little further and break it up. Let's get that little piece in there. That's where my tire change is going to be. Let's project that through and get it to come across. It does that. That stays up on board there. And that's that. There's my center line of wheel. There's my little canard system. Let's get this thing to kind of, now let's fly. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. Let's bring those up off of that surface. Begin to just do this and dive it in. And build it right under that wheel. This thing kind of melds right under that front tire. It gives us a little bit more stability as we're going through the process. That begins to make a little bit more sense. It doesn't float out there in the breeze. It's got a connection point back in through here that really kind of stabilizes the shape itself. Little warning light up on top of this. Little warning light on top of that. And there's the connector. There's a connection. There's a return. And then you don't see the rest of that. So we're going to run that through. And right there, that's pretty wicked looking. It's almost getting there. So we're coming back in through here. Now let's do this. A bit of tone. The glass in place here, where the cockpit's going to be. Up, back in again. Little structural strut right here to kind of give it some integrity. Just kind of ink that in, pardon me here. Take that right on through, a little bit more strong line in through here, kind of bring me back into this. This is my headlamp, the headlamp. Bring that around, soften that out just a bit. Back in the canopy. Take that reflection right through it. Gonna hit some really interesting theme stuff here today, guys. Just to kind of look at the proportion and kind of true it up just a little bit. Engine intake, just getting some darks and lights in this thing to kind of give it a presence. Engine intake, body roll again. That disappears. Let's get this line to kind of come through and notice how we're keeping that profile real flat. Meaning, for example, that upper relative to the body side. Look how really simple that is. Details are awesome. Oh, hey, thanks, Chip. Much appreciated. Again, notice we're really trying to keep two things in tow here. Very simple outrigger wheel support system and a real low profile piece in the actual use of the canopy or the cockpit area. Let's drop this in. Put a more body behind this guy. Kind of give it some tooth. Come underneath. A little bit of support there and there. A little line changing through here. Get that just kind of where that bar fender is. Let's get this fender in place. Let's just kind of take this guy and fill in some of the blanks. There's my shadow on the wheel itself. There's a shadow of the wheel. That's all I see there. Let's drop some shadow behind this form. We can start to see this and just take that shape right back. This is all tire back in through here. We'll see a little bit of that. Let me get this ink in first. Let's pick this little piece. That's going to be all negative, and behind the tire itself, that's going to drop in. A bit of shadow on top of that. Strut itself, the strut itself, the insert piece, or the suspension assembly. And the shadow again. And the wheel. Arrow flap. The connector comes off of the body itself, down into that. A bit of a bone line in through here, a little softer. Let's bring these lines through and kind of put some emphasis on these guys. And for what it's worth, some digital lighting in that guy. I'll take it that far. That's a neat little thumbnail sketch about, hey, Lenny here. Super good afternoon as always, enjoying the show. Hey, thanks very much. Yeah, this has been a challenge to respect some of the origin design character, but actually make it functional racing. Yeah, you're right, Trixel. Sure has been a whole lot of fun. Okay, there we are there. There it is. We'll put that far side tone in here. And again, just simple little sketches here to kind of give us some good flavor about what we're after here. There's a body cut right there that comes across. That'll come across. There's our wheel change here. A little bit of a flap change on this guy. That's where it spins out. And through here, same thing. And again, here's that trailing edge. Just put a little bit of that tire in there so you see where that's exposed. Just real loose. That's where we're acting right there. Pardon me, we'll ink this in a little bit better here. Not well done, but shadow. Really scratchy sketches here, gang, so forgive me. Just want to go through some real fast black and white themes because he's concentrating on the character of this guy. Give him some real guts. Super good afternoon as always. Enjoying the show. Oh, thanks very much, Lanier. Nice to have you on board here. Pardon me, I might make a lot of noise. Now, let's translate that into a side view. Let's do this. Let's get this guy in. What are we dealing with here? Let's get this character down. Let's put that drive line uphill. Man, let's get that cockpit really down in there. That's what I think is really stressful. And a lot of neat stuff. There's the windscreen right there. That portion right there is this guy right here. Now we're going to really sneak up on this guy. Let's go back in and get this down here. I said before, it might be kind of neat to keep all that information behind the wheel so that cockpit can drive off and do this and get real quick. There's my suspension support roughly in here behind the body as it comes through. Now let's bring this dihedral off of that. Let's get that base plane in. There's my return. There's my design line. There's my cut right back into form. There's my connector. There's my intake area. Engine intake over the top. A little bit of a second line to give me a little bit of a breather with this thing. Let's end that off and bring it back in. And there's my connector to the wheel pant right there. There's my rear area. There's my vertical, which now becomes that guy. Back down to ground. Return, and there's my cut line right off the back of this guy. Now, engine, really big, hairy hydrogen system backing through here. This kind of cantilevers off the shape itself. Just that, into this. Real loose. Oh, pardon me, gang, sorry. Line weight. Center line of wheel. And again, there's an underbody system here. Here's that connector we're referring to, getting into. That body suspension connector. And there's my drive line right there. That brings me right back into this wheel pant. And this is all negative spacing through here, guys. That's all negative. All airspace. Again, all airspace. Real low profile. I mean, the guttier that gets, the lower that appearance. Look at that thing. That just starts to scream a little bit there, guys, I hope. You're stopping by. Yeah, ballistic. Hey, is it good? Yeah, the lean. Yeah, that's got a lot of lean to it. You're right there, ballistic. Got it. So there it is. A little more refinement in this sketch, and we'll move on here. Again, the purpose of today's stream is to take what we've already gotten and kind of tune it a little bit more so we get more impact out of this guy. Let's put the real wheel in place here so we know where we are. The front wheel. Center line of wheel. And again, all of this stuff now has been pushed back in through here. It's in behind that wheel envelope itself. And I think that's going to be really critical. We might see just a touch of that nose out here, but it's not going to take an awful lot of damage here. And I was aware of that when we did that thing on Wednesday. It just looked like it needed a little bit more breathing room. This guy kind of cantilevered his back, so let's get that in squared away. There's a nice little composition page about what it might look like in the three. Look how lithe that looks. Real simple. Very aggressive, and that's what we want to keep. We want to keep the aggression side, but not overburden it. And while I'm at it, let's do this. I want to show you this here, guys. I'm going to start another sketch here in a moment, if I can find where I am. Here we are. Get this guy all set up here. Here's an interesting thing. Last week, after I finished Wednesday's stream, I went back in and took a look at both packages. We're working on getting a Discord channel so you can hang out and get some scenes, share your own art. Yeah, very cool, Pixel. Thanks for bringing that up. Again, back to basic thought here. After Wednesday's stream, after going through the whole process, I came in on Thursday morning and I brought out the G12 package, or actual perspective drawing, and I did a comparison sketch. This is the actual G12 here. This is the revision we're working on. Interesting. This is where it really begins. The rubber, to me, meets the road. We've maintained the same wheelbase. We've maintained the same basic character of the shark nose. We've eliminated, for example, all the bulking through here. We've actually integrated those suspension members into cantilevers or winglets in here that hide the suspension itself, much more aerodynamic. We've also kind of dropped the nose from there down to here. We've eliminated, for example, we've limited that real severe, harsh line through the sight line. And we've also kept this as an integration piece. All we've done is taken that portion right there, integrated this into the spar, and giving justification for this tail section, but adding a pant system back here to keep it much more aerodynamic. Everything underneath has been kept intact. And one thing we want to really stress is interesting that we're looking at this from the point of, hey, Frogchin, how you doing? Thanks for joining us here today. One thing that's really interesting to me, and we'll get into this more, is the more we refine this shape, the more we're going to play this up. We're talking about this piece here being a survival cell. Well, I'll show you here very briefly, if I can, on time today. This survival cell is suspended between these two outriggers. In other words, it's a free-floating body that can be utilized from the cockpit, or in case of a shunt or an accident, it's an easy access entry egress piece altogether. Didn't notice it was the same size. Yeah, the overall size of the chip of the 7, pardon me, the 12. We took those same dimensions. I just did a comparison sketch of where we are with the G12 as is, and then took the same dimensions, same width, same wheelbase, dropped the height, kept basically the packaging the same, made it much more of a GTR series as opposed to the G12 GTR, which is not a GTR. It's another big, huge vehicle. Doesn't have any speed form to it, nor have any, and I'm not being critical of those guys. They did a great job with the original piece. As a ground transportation piece on a planet, terrific. But as a racer, I don't think so. So we kind of looked at that from the point of view of keeping everything really honest and dropping. So all these sketches you've been looking at throughout the day, even this guy, this guy right here honors that same set of package circumstances. We haven't changed anything. Everything's really there intact. We're just kind of really modifying the whole process. Great side by, yeah, thanks, Pixel. Really helps. Side by side, that tells a story. So with that thought in mind, let's carry on here, gang. I just thought I'd take a moment and interrupt the shell whip for a second and show you that we're not really going out there in left field and saying, oh, let's do our own thing. We're trying to honor some of the architecture and the heritage of the Origin series, but bring it into a real race car system. We're not happy there yet. We can still modify the shape to no end. But we've got a good body of form to work with and really kind of develop this thing and make it almost like a McLaren killer. So there we go. Let's get that out of the way and we'll kind of move on here. Now, what happens if we take the operation and say, let's change the wheelbase a little bit. Let's kind of plant the wheels first. Get that in place. Let's draw through it. Let's going to build another sketch. How to build an architecture. Put the wheel width in. Far side wheels. Wheel width in. Take that same drive line off the top of that wheel and bring it uphill. Blend it off, get that side into the far side of the wheel, bring that around, get the architecture set, bring that across, and again, let's find that center line. There's my center line of wheel right here, right through here. That's where my center line is going to be found. Let's put that out of the way, pardon me. That's my center line of front wheel. I'm going to take that axle and draw it right through. And then this guy, I'm going to find the center line there. And again, same view. There's my center line right there. So the perspective center of that distance right there is about right here. That's my perspective center. That dot is going to tell me how I'm going to build the cockpit. All set? Here we go. Let's kind of bring this in. Let's get that line in place. Notice, it's real low. I mean, that's my center line. That's what's going to happen right through the middle of that machine. Look how low that is. That line relative to that line. It's just real low profile, keeping it nice and minimal. Now let's get the shark nose in place. Let's kind of bring this in. Let's change the nose just a bit. Let's bring that line up. It's going to disappear. That line is not going to disappear. So right away, the two lines, I've got the cockpit set. There it is. Now let's get the intake in here. Engine intake. I'm going to bring it up a little bit more guts to it. This is now going to be engine intake. Now let's bring this line back. Let's kind of drive that through, backside perspective. Let's get that line to come in and just show me where that's going to end up. Wow, look how low that thing is. That's cool. Man, look at the distance from there to there. That's minimum surface, Chief. Really minimum. So here we go. Let's get the rest of the footprint in place. Let's come back down to ground. Let's get that little active arrow wing out here. Kind of scab it back. Let's put that design line in place. Keeping all the same elements, but just changing some of the proportions. Now, to you, the viewer, we're not changing an awful lot of the surfaces. We're refining them. We're going to a refinement series. Do we want more lean in this angle here? Do we want to be stiffer with it? Do we want to be rounder up front? Do we want to connect the dots here? Do we want to push this nose cone back? Do we want to be blunter with it? There's a lot of things to work with here. And that's what I'm really trying to, the sweep is spot on. I hope so. I'm an old man. It better work. So here we go here. Feels very Origin-like. Yeah, it has that same basic care. We kept the shark nose. Too bad Nemo's not with us today. He brought up a good comment about maybe a month ago that we need to keep that shark nose piece on the original. Shark nose meaning this feature line right here. So we try to work hard to keep that active with it, but we just dropped it down and got a little slimmer with it. So let's carry on here, gang. There's that design line. Let's kick it back. Let's get this rear wheel place. Let's get that pant place. And let's kind of give that a suspension member. Let's do this. We're more dramatic with it. Let's kind of cant that in and run it with the same parallel structure as the engine intake is. And let's run that back through. Let's get this guy down to ground. Let's take this line through. Let's let that line float just a bit and then connect it right there. Let's just cheat the view just a bit. Let's show where that roundness is back here. That thing comes around, and there's an actual intake right back in through here. We're gonna darken that in. That's at the rear tail section. I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. That tail section is almost like a draft duct that brings in air and kind of drops it into the tail section here. So let's get the engine intake in place. That's the intake. There's that screamer there that comes across up on top. Here's my cockpit assembly now. I'm gonna pull it all forward and go the other way. Let's round this out the other way. Let's kind of put a little bit more spoon in this thing. Let's do this. Round that up, bring that up. Let's put some lighting in there. Lighting. Let's put the lamp graphics right in there. Day-night running lights. Look at it. Look at subtle little changes, how it changes the character. For example, look at this. We kept that same process in place. Just turn the view around a little bit, but look what happens when you go from a cat's eye system here to almost like a real sneaky looking sliver piece up front. So just, again, I'm bringing these sketches back because I really want to make sure we hammer home today. We're not changing a lot of the systems we're dealing with here. We're refining them. Do we want to make little subtle changes with line weights? Do we want to push things rearward, pull them forward? Do we want to be less flap, more flap? It's just all these little subtle changes make a great statement in the design process. So let me get back to this. Come down to the ground. Let's get that rear wheel in place, which is there. Add a little bit of width to it. Drop that in place. And again, add that same Origin connection system. It's there. And there. Let's put a shadow in this guy. This time we're a little scratch here. I don't want to take a lot of time here, guys. I'm going to bore you to death. There's a shadow that drives back in. Gives me that. That drives back and does this. Comes around and does that. And let's just do something else. Let's kind of take that. Let's be bold. Let's take that thing right off of that and connect it. And connect it. Let's bring that through. Let's float that off of that. Let's get that spike to work. Maybe it's a single piece right here. Comes right off underneath that nose assembly right there. So that guy comes off of that piece right there. There's my connection. There's my dot there. And I've got this and this little arrow dart there and there. That comes back off that surface. Off of that. Look at the character of that. Whoa. This is cool. I'm having a lot of fun. Hope you guys are. I hope you are enjoying this as much as I am. Get that pant in place. Let's bring that into place. Let's get this little return here. Down the ground. That design line in place. That comes back and does this. Get that upper line in place here. Let's scratch that through into that one front wheel. Let's get this canopy in place. Let's do this. Here's my B2L. This air brake, for example, comes up and does the following. At speed, that thing will come right up and give me a little bit more resistance for braking purposes. And let's go a little tab back here, a little tab. But that thing sits right back in here. Hey, Linear, thank you very much. Doctor, thanks for subscribing. It's great to see you. 5 emotes shared. Hey, very good. I was taking your time to do this. Well, I enjoy it. I'm working with you guys. I mean, to me, the real joy of this is watching and working with you all. You've been terrific to work with, and I can't thank you enough. It's been a real honor for me, believe me. It's just fun stuff, and then you guys make it fun. So thank you for paying attention and being on board with me here today. It's just been really interesting here. So let's kind of tone this in. Thank you so much. Hey, CS Lesbians, good deal. Thank you very much, gang. That's outstanding. Thank you so much. Let's go back in here. Let's finish the sketch out a little bit. Let's go back in through here. Roll this out. Let's kind of put a bit of tone in this. I'm going to go real quick here to not bore you. There we are. Let's kind of get some surface in here. Just really interesting stuff. Real flat, real subtle, minimal surface changes here to keep it nice and aero. Let's kind of roll that in. There we are there. Let's get this backside wheel in place here, the sponson. I'm not going to see an awful lot of that on the other side here. Let's kind of roll that back into this. There's my body weight here. Roll that into it. Notice how that, now we're taking this whole canard system and developing into the front wheel system right there. So it's going to come off of that, off of that. Now let's put a tone in this thing so it floats, almost like a single member. Put a little bit of strut system in through underneath the whole bottom of this guy that comes back in and does that. Let's put a little bit of tone inside this. That's the underbelly of the actual survival cell. Let's kind of tone that in. And let's get that cockpit in place now. Far side, can you read that all right? There you go. Far side graphics. A bit of reflection in this thing. Bring it onto this. Side of pencil. Tone it in. Body side. Notice how that line disappears. That's what that's the one thing I really want to be careful of. I want that line right there, that whole upper to be suppressed in between those two wheels. Just really interesting how it all comes together. Let's see, Pixelate, gotta have you subbed on here. Thanks for stopping. Oh yeah, that's great. Thanks for stopping by. So really appreciate it, guys. There it is. There it is. Let's kind of get that wheel pant in place. And there's my underbody piece here. It's got a bit more shadow in here. Let's put a little more definition in this suspension trailer that's on the original origin. It's there. It kind of sits in there. Just nice and loose. There's airspace back in through here. And again, this is all tire here. Let's kind of just tone this just a bit. That's tire. Let's kind of put this in place here. Does that. And this is all tire back here. Let's put that split line in place here. The reason that split line is there is because at speed, one of the nice things about the aero systems on this whole thing is that flap right there. We're going to put a separator here, a separator here. That's going to break open at speed. That'll pivot up. That'll just open up and close. Why that's important? Because when you go into the corners, well, you're going to need all the drag you can to get that thing down on the ground. So that little active arrow along with this active arrow inside here is going to be really big, helpful to get that function to work. So let's carry on here, guys. Thanks so much. There's the glass. A little more. Let's put a little more strength in this glass. Kind of break it out so we can separate that fender line just a bit. Pardon my hands here, guys. Okay, I have a little bit of promo here. Let's do this. E12. A little sunscreen bit there. There she is. Yeah, it's kind of cool. There we go. So let's kind of get this in place. Here's tire back here. Real loose sketches. A little bit of line weight change. Let's kick that back too. That's kind of a neat little deal. That rolls in here. This is now shadow. A little bold over that shadow so we can separate this thing. underbody connector for the sponson. Again, a little bit of identity graphics here. A bit of shadow underneath the sponson into those splitters. And again, another double underneath this guy. So it's got some bandwidth to it. It's going to really bite that guy as it goes through the air. And again, shadow underneath it. Hey, need your help here, gang. Is this making sense? There it is. It's another view of this mean machine. Where's the fuel filter? No hubcaps. Yeah, you got it, Chip. None. No wheel covers whatsoever. The fuel filters are right back in through here. So let's kind of turn this around a little bit. So let me get some feedback from you all. What do you think thus far? No wheel covers at all, Chip. If they were, they'd be all anodized. If I put wheel covers on this thing, we opened up the wheels, no problem whatsoever. Anodized zinc would be really cool. It's like a real deep metallic charcoal, almost like carbon fiber, but it's metallic looking. Very cool. Let me sharpen a stick. What do you think so far, guys? Is it making sense? What's interesting about this, let me go back to this last sketch. Look at the difference in wheelbase. The wheelbase changes here from one to the other. Let's put that up there. Look how this is a minimum wheelbase study here. How about that? Pixel was actually thinking the same. Yeah, me too. When it came up, Pixel, I think the leader that, what? Wheel covers? You got to be kidding. Chip, come on, get with it here. That's funny. Thanks for the input. However, but look at this. Look at the difference in wheelbase. Shorter wheelbase. This is called a SWIB, short wheelbase. And then extended, EXT. Look at the difference in length. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of in between the two. What do you think, guys? Wheelbase-wise, longer or shorter? The SWIB or the extended? Hey, doctor, what's up? Chip likes a longer wheelbase. All right, a longer wheelbase, there's one vote. So far, so good. Thanks, Chip. Not a fan of the stubby look. Yeah, it kind of shortens the proportion, doesn't it? It doesn't give it the same romance. Let's see. I am amazed learning about the aero underpan curve. Yeah, it's amazing how that system works, Pixel. And this vehicle itself, there's some things we're going to be showing you in other views. This whole under tray, let me do this. This flap right here, this aero flap coming in through here, that comes in behind the wheel duct itself. As it goes river, there's an underpan underneath the cockpit survival area that drives the air into the diffusers, and I'll show you that in a moment when we do that nice little sketch on how that begins to function. Let's go another way here. I'm going to do this. Let's come back in. Let's go the other way. Let's get a center line down here. Put a center line in. Let's put the nose cone in place. Get that up and running. Let's kind of do a real quick little gesture. A little bit of an overhead 3/4. Insert, intake, far side fender. Let's draw through this guy. Notice I'm a big fan of keeping things really honest. Just draw through this stuff. Ready? Okay, I don't have to remove it from here. Let's just kind of fake the wheel in through here. Let's come up with the sponsor. Let's get this body in place. Let's do this, and then off that same width, which is right here. Let's get that to place. Notice, why is this view important? Because it wants to show us where the connections are. Notice, survival cell connection, engine intake. Let me kind of ink that in a little bit here. Draw that in just a bit more. Pull that in place, draw it right through. Back here, very round, almost origin-like. So you put a circle back in there. Look how I'm building that shape. So far, so good, gang? I'm gonna bring this into play. Let's take this and let's get that second wheel in place of thickness and take that back. There's my connection, there and there. There's an intake there. There's engine intake there. And again, that line goes back and picks up this. It also picks up that very round, let's kind of ink that in, that very round origin tail section of that guy. Come together, gang. Look how we're stretching this thing. Now let's go back to the canopy. Let's get that into place. Now back here, the other surprise is this. When you get back into here, this is going to reverse the other way. We're going to reverse this sweep and do this. We're going to bring that right into play like that. This is where that draft intake is at the very top of the piece. That's right back in here. That portion right there is this portion in the other perspective. That's a draft intake piece. That kind of draws cold air or air in and drives it down under the diffuser. We'll show you that in just a moment here. Dang, it's getting longer and longer. This is an extended view here, Chip. I'm exaggerating the view for a reason. I'm going to draw through this guy. I'm going to put this into place and show you what that survival system is. It comes up and connects. This is all underbody right there. Now, let's do this with a red pen. I want to show you what's happening here in section. Let's pick some hard points. Let's go there, 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 and there. Those are going to be hard points. I want to show you what happens inside that survival cell. I'm going to draw through it first in perspective. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to cut 6 sections through this guy. Here's my center line. That, there, 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 and there. That's center line. Now, we're going to do this. I'm going to loft that surface by coming up and doing the following. It's going to loft it. I'm going to loft it. I'm going to loft it. Loft it. Bring it up, or loft it, and drop it. There's my upper piece. There's my section change. As I come underneath this thing, now, the element of surprise is this. This survival cell, the body, the wheel sponsons and pods are very flat. I kept them that way for aero purposes. Really non-disturbing surface. The air just channels right through in the plan view. It goes right through. However, in the body survival cell, it now does this. It's going to roll underneath and do this. Roll underneath, do that, roll that, and roll away like that. Right down to, there's my connection, so on and so on. There's a geometry. Let's turn this upside down here, guys. There's my section right there. It rolls right up underneath and forms a survival cell into which, there's my center line. Picks up and goes back. There's a center line of my vehicle. Look at that thing. That cradle's right inside that beauty. All set? Now we could do this too. We can go back and say, oh, let's chamfer it off. Now if I do that, notice how that chamfer is getting wider as I go back. No problem. Now that line's going to do this. It's going to come up, drop back into the survival cell. The intake? Cool. Then up along the body side and right back into the intake itself, right there. That's what happened. I'm sorry, that goes a little bit lower. Right in there. There it is. That's a different section change. But boy, I tell you, that dictates a lot of neat stuff here. So let's do this. I'm going to go back to pencil. Did that help at all? Explain what's happening between this surface here, which is outboard, engine intake, draw through it. Upper level. Now what happens out here is this. This comes out, this kind of project the line over here. This comes in and does this. That section is now doing this. Look how that separation. The real key is the separation from this form to that form. That's what's happening. That's what's really cool about this. And again, over here, let's project that line through. That comes over. There's the flatness. There's the body section. And there's the gap. From there to there, and from there to there. That's all airspace. Air, separation. Very interesting. So here we go. Let's kind of fill this in. Get the cockpit in place here. Drive that in. Let's use that second line we work with here. Let's put that in place. Let's put a bit of tone in this guy. Now this is where you show the separation. Look at this. That guy separates itself from the actual body form. And also, this guy will separate itself from the body form. Now, let's do this. Glass. Little slight sliver underneath the bone line there. And again, glass. And the fade. And the fade. Oops. Working all right, guys? Reflected light. Reflection. And again, lighting. Look at the subtle details on that thing. Helping, gang? Let's come back over here. Let's kind of finish the sketch up. Pardon me here. Let's finish this out so you can see where the relationship is. Let's get this wheel pant. There's my rear wheel out here. There's my pant here. That comes down and does this. There's my reverse canard. There's the rest of the body shape right there. It comes in and does that. Canard. There it is, gang. Real simple. I use that sketch to kind of describe, because it's important for us to know that what we're talking about here, this is all very much, I refer to this as a unibody. That's all one big form construction right there. We're looking at a separation or a cantilever or a hybrid system here where the actual wheels, for ease of assembly and maintenance and so forth and serviceability, so much better. There's actually there are just three components here. There's a survival cell and two, what I refer to as catamarans or outriggers. So very simple to work on if there's any incidents that take place in the track. So there's two studies down, guys. And I think you're right, Chip. I like that longer wheelbase. It just kind of gives more presence to it, and it looks wicked. So let's kind of carry on here. Now that I've got those two down, let me see, where am I here? Yeah, let's go back to this guy. Just for what it's worth, one more shot here. We haven't had a chance to really study what the rear section is going to look like with this guy. So let's do this. We'll come back here and we'll kind of wrap it up with this guy here. Thanks. Really appreciate your patience here, folks. Am I doing okay? Am I communicating all right? So far, so good? Fantastic. Let's go back in through here. Let me just kind of get the ballpoint pen. Let's kind of do it rear 3/4. Get the wheel in place. Real loose. Ground line down. Let's get that perspective set up here. Let's kind of drive that across. It's going to give me a frame of reference. Come back and get that rear wheel set. Again, drive line off that upper. Drive line off that upper. And the wheel itself. No, let's get that center line in place. This is where it gets really touchy. Up, down, really roll that thing and get real minimal. Again, that thing disappears real rapidly. There's almost a real rough shell of where we're going to start with here. All right, let's kind of come back in through here. Let's get this guy's offset. Let's come back and bring this wheel pan in place here. Let's get this line to come into play. That wheel pan to return. That drives right through. That's part of that active arrow system I was referring to earlier. That inside line that comes back to this. Let's get that wheel pan set up. Drive that line through. And then that comes back and does the same thing. Get the wheel thickness back in through here. Draw through it and go to the other side and get that set. And there's that wheel coming off of that. Let's get that engine intake. I'm going to reverse it just a little bit. Let's just change the character of this guy. Let's get this, again, this very origin, very round tail, real round tail deck on this guy. There it is. There's my center line right here. Drops a bit. Comes around and picks up that intake. Picks up that intake. Carries on. Canopy. There's a real rough rear three-quarter. That's what that guy's going to start to look like here. Really interesting, huh, gang? So let's kind of put the wheel in place. Come down with this big actor. Let's draw through that section. I'm going to float this thing right out of here. Bring that through. Bring that through. Strike a line in through here. Get those engine nacelles to work. Just setting up. There's the under tray. There she be. Start to block it in here, guys. Good. So far, so good. Let's do a little bit of this. Separate this guy so you see where that backside line is here. A little bit of background in this beauty. An aero flap. Let's get the canopy in place. You won't see much of that. Into that drive line there. Engine intake. Little subtle change here, adding a little bit of something across the deck, a little bit of a brake. And into this catwalk. And into that catwalk. That's kind of interesting. That little subtle break in there kind of gives some body to it. Keyboard is playing tricks. Oh no. You all right? All right, let's do this. Again, a little bit of tone in through here. Shows where the negative space is. Shadow. Body side. Intake. Rear tire. Active aero. If we had to, add a little bit of this. Won't see it over there, but maybe just a touch of this, guys. Just to kind of give it a little bit of presence here. And here, I've been waiting. Yeah, me too. We've done a lot of investigating work here on this in the rear three-quarter. Then you went back. Let me show you a couple of things we did earlier on. We did a couple of variations on that. Let me kind of stop there for a second. Just looking at some hydrogen cell engine systems, and we did this on prior to Wednesday's stream. Some variations on theme, for example, looking at that kind of a look. And also on the rear three-quarter itself, getting much more, not bolder with it, and really gutty with some of these very high octagonal or probably hexagonal engine systems. So that's what this guy is going to do. I think that's one of the things we're looking at very strongly here. So let's kind of go back in through here and just kind of ink in where we are. Little partial view here. Exhaust. There it is. Tip 7, no place for truck nuts, and that's a good thing. You got it. There it is. So there we are, gang. This is a little bit of a rear 3/4 in this beauty. Let's put a little bit more shadow in this guy here. Let's kind of do this. That's all body form there. Let's go a little bolder with the shadow. There it is. There's the rear 3/4, guys. What do you think? I really thought before I saw this. Yeah, it's much lower. We're dropping underneath this whole pan area there, linear, just to kind of keep that thing nice and clean and very simple. And then it's just let me kind of clean this up a little bit here. Well, what do you think, gang? With me so far? It's just making sense? A little split line there. Get that to work. In case we need it, this little section back here could be also a narrow flap too. Kind of works in conjunction with this guy. We've got this beauty working too. So we've got this guy that's active arrow, that moves, that can kind of flap in and out. This guy will spin open for wheel change and the like. And I'm gonna just do this. I'm gonna kind of wrap up with something here. Let's try something like this. Let's do this. Center line, draw a line, overview, cockpit, body section, glass, engine inlet, strut, oops, sorry about that. Glass, Front assembly. There it is, gang. Something looks like good. Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. So I think that body change are really going to help you get the little modular system. Notice again, this is where you begin to see the separation. So please forgive my silence here, gang. I just want to make sure we concentrate on getting some of these pieces all put together. So let's go back and retrace today's events here. Just refining some of the sketches. This is where we started. This was phase number 1. We just kind of look at maybe getting that canopy to drop in a little bit. And is a plane with wheels? Yeah, I think that's what I'm after, Chip. I think you got it. On that same thought too, Chip, be sure to tune in on Wednesday. I'm going to go on the inside and start doing some cockpit studies here with instrumentation, so we can kind of put the whole package together. Again, this is where we started. Again, today's whole mission was to get some refinement in. What do we do with line weights? How do we change certain character? Do we want a little quicker? Do we want a little softer? Do we want to push things back? Little refinement areas. I think we've got a good shell to work with here. It's just getting some of the little fine-tune areas in here, and I think especially when we did this made a huge difference. When we see that package development, for example, as is the current G12 rather, and then dropping it right back into the same overall width, same wheelbase, but just dropping the character, keeping some of the same elements. For example, this outrigger, it's here. The shark nose glass system drop, but it's maintained. A lot of this time is fine for me. Oh, that's good. I hope it doesn't get too busy. I'm really glad you're on board, Chip. It's been fun to have you, and as well as everybody. I really can't thank you enough for taking the time to kind of feed back here, gang. So that's where we started. There's sketch number 1. That's where we started, right there. Came into that play with some of the interesting, getting a gesture down, taking a little, stretching the wheelbase a little bit, and showing how this whole module works, for example. In this series, the floating survival cell and the cantilever pontoons that kind of support the system, the intake area into the hydrogen engine system, and a little bit of a round origin piece with a little bit of a drop back, what I call a dump vent back there, kind of draw air back into that dihedral. And then last but not least, getting into what the thing looks like from the rear 3/4. It's a real presence about it. I think it has a bit of a nasty looking chip to it in terms of really making sense, and little subtle changes like maybe adding a catwalk out here so it's not so pure. Little things like that. Then again, the very aggressive, almost bee-like or hornet-like front assembly of what this thing looks like. This is all airspace in here, gang. So a lot of fun here today, and I really thank you so much for the time spent. I'm running a little bit long, but it was worthwhile. I thought I wanted to take some time today to really, for my own benefit, to kind of tune into this stuff and see what we're coming along with. And in closing here, to each one of you who have been joining the stream today, thank you very much for joining in. It means an awful lot to me. I thank you for the time. It needs more guns and missiles and the couplers. Okay, well, maybe we'll look at that next time around here, Chip. So to all of you, thank you so much for joining in. It's been an absolutely terrific fun for me to have you on board. I'm glad you're enjoying it as much as I am, hopefully. And if you have any interest in, for example, basic drawing skills, please feel free to drop by my my website, drcontrast.com, where you'll find a beginner series. We've got it up and running now. We're adding some new things to it. A store is coming, adding more of the Twitch stuff into the system. So when you go to the website, you'll see some of the work I do on Monday, Wednesday, and on Fridays. And last but not least, I really appreciate your feedback in terms of what we're working with here. So, and again, with that thought in mind too, please feel free. If you have any concerns about, for example, things you're drawing or things you're working with, anything you want me to draw or work with you on it, terrific. Please feel to drop me a note at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. put a suggestion things in, and maybe send me a sketch, what you're working on. And I'll dedicate a stream to working with you on making some refinements, or working back and forth with you to make some changes on or improvements on what your drawings are. And by no means am I saying, for example, that you're incapable or your work is insufficient. That's not what I'm saying. If I can help you get better with it and what you're doing, that's my mission here. So once again, gang, thanks so much for joining in today. It's been a real joy to be with you. Hope you have a terrific weekend and take care of yourself. We'll see you on Monday on the drawing lesson, for example. Really interesting how the drawing sessions on Monday are going to be taking two-point perspective, go a little further with that, putting some development product into it, and going from there. Thanks so much for everybody. And again, I'll also close with this because I really believe it with all my heart. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. All the very best. Thanks very much, gang. Dare to dream, dare to be great, and thank you for joining the Dreamlands here with Dr. Contrast. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye now.